What is good, Tesla family? It's Ray J back with another video. And in this one, I want to break down what's happening with Tesla, SPY, Nvidia, the QQQ, and a couple of other tickers. I want to break down what's going on with the economic calendar going into tomorrow, what the news is saying about Tesla, what you should be watching for as time progresses. Before I begin devil's information, before I get into any more details, let me just mention a couple of things. Firstly, I am not a financial planner, so take nothing I say as financial advice. And also, if you guys can, please check out the Weeble link, which is down below and in the description. If you sign up for Webull and deposit $500, you're guaranteed 20 free stocks, and the offer ends very soon in just 5 hours from now. Anyways, for Tesla, we had a very, very interesting day. We got this nice little pump all the way up to this resistance at 185. Once that broke, we went up to our next target at 188. That's the exact level we called out based off our levels and based off other factors. Once we reached this resistance at 188, we got a nice rejection. I did mention that that's a strong possibility looking at a dump that was coming to the markets. We saw SPY also pump alongside the QQQ, but I called out in my intraday video that it was likely a fake pump and the market had downside coming. And that is exactly what ended up playing out as SPY ended up dipping. I recorded all of this in my intraday video. So even SPY went up to 547 only to reject. So what does this mean for the markets? That's a big question that's now coming up. I want to give you guys my insights in just a couple of minutes. Let's first talk about some data that's going to be very important for tomorrow and also the news about Tesla. So tomorrow is going to be Tuesday, June 25th, 2024. In the morning, we have Bowman giving a speech, and just know that they are the most hawkish Fed speakers, so that could be a little bit negative for the markets as we open. Then after that, all the data will be very minor until about 10 o'clock a.m., 10 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, starting 30 minutes after the market ends up opening. So what's so important about that time? We first have some consumer confidence reports, then some manufacturing numbers coming out from the Richmond Fed, which will give us more insights on how the sector is doing. Then at 10:30 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, we have the Dallas Fed Services data. So this will also cause some more volatility. This is used as an excuse for these like market makers, institutions to kind of pump liquidity into the markets. And they do this based off what's more advantageous for them and a bunch of different factors. But just know we're going to likely get a lot of volatility 30 minutes and then 1 hour after the market ends up opening. And then after that, we just have Cook giving a speech alongside Bowman again. Cook shouldn't cause anything too crazy, but Bowman may cause something towards the end of the day because they're known for being hawkish. So just be very careful with these hawkish Fed speakers, and quite a bit of data 30 minutes and 1 hour after market open. Those are the most important time frames. Now, for data, I want to call out that we have a very important month and a very important week, if anything. So this June, we just have a few earnings, which are very minor, of course. We have like FedEx coming out after the market closes tomorrow. Then we have Paychecks and General Mills on Wednesday, Nike on Thursday, all very, very minor. But just know that once Friday comes and once the market closes on Friday, that is it for the quarter. That is it for June. That's going to be a very important close because once we finish this, first thing, these institutions, Wall Street and et cetera, have to have their balance sheets kind of like adjusted at the very end of the quarter. So we'll see how we end up closing because of that. And then simultaneously, you have to remember that we have big bank earnings coming out, tech earnings now starting. The next earnings cycle starts for Q2 starting next week. So that's going to be very important. The banks and the finance sector are usually the first ones to announce earnings. And I'll be watching to see how those end up going. There's been a lot of talk about banks not being in the best of places because of the fact that they're not really they're not really hedging as properly as they should be. They're getting a lot of criticism for it and not really being prepared for some kind of economic turndown. So I've seen a lot of headlines about that today. So we'll see how things go for them, especially going into next week. That's something to just keep in mind, especially some contractions that could be coming to commercial real estate. On top of all of this, we have the fear and greed index currently at fear. Fear is making up the majority of sentiments, and the reason for that is because of how high the market was at. People became very fearful at those levels, and a lot of sellers started stepping in. And especially as the market's dipping lower, fear is continuing to make up our sentiment. Now, keep in mind, sentiment and market momentum are two different things. Momentum is still at extreme greed. This is based off the position we are relative to the 125 daily moving average. So this tells us that the market is still technically in an uptrend. Just because we're in an uptrend, it doesn't mean we have to be green every single day, right? We've had instances where we kind of dipped a bit, we pumped higher, dipped a bit, pumped higher, and we're in a situation where we are dipping a bit for now. SPY, even though it looks like we're dropping so much, we actually only dropped about 7 points from where we were from the all-time high for SPY. Tesla's still holding up very well too, so it's showing some strength. But the reason why this is significant is because the market is still, we're still in a more of a bull market. We're still on a very, very strong uptrend overall. We just hit a very, very high level to the point where we're still in this greed mode, despite the fact that our sentiment is now fearful. sentiment is fearful, but our position puts us in a more greedy indicator. On top of this, the put and call option positioning is at extreme greed, kind of in the middle, not really doing a whole lot. And volatility for the markets. The volatility is still quite neutral as we're approaching the 50 daily moving average. The VIX is gaining some strength. Anyways, for Tesla, we have something very important to talk about. There's been a lot of headlines coming out about Tesla's deliveries, and a lot of these headlines are saying negative things about it, how Tesla's expected to have a tough quarter for deliveries all over again. Things are looking too good for Tesla and this and that. I'm going to be 100% honest, guys. I'm not 100% sure how this is going to look because the Chinese numbers don't look very good, but because we had more tax incentives and these tax credits, more incentives like that, at least in the US, things could shift a bit, especially with the new changes for the Model Y. So I'm going to be very, very careful. I'm not 100% confident it's going to be that great because of what I'm seeing in China. But you never know. At the very last few weeks, we do tend to be stronger, so we'll hopefully get some very, very strong sales to offset what we got from before. And we'll see and hope for the best. But I just want to make it very clear that a lot of these analysts are basically expecting 450,000, and others are saying that Tesla's going to come very, very short of that. So we will see. I'll be very, very patient, of course, and we just want to be very, very optimistic. Nonetheless, at least for the long term of the company, despite what this looks like. So we'll see how it goes. This data is going to be coming out next week in very, very early July, like July 1st or the 2nd, probably. I'll talk more about that later on, but just keep this in the back of your mind. There's also a lot of headlines coming out that the Model Y is retaining its spot for the most American car right now, which is good. At least in the US, as it's very popular. That also puts it behind, or I'm sorry, above the Model X and the Model 3, which are still in the top 20. So that's something worth noting. You can actually see the rankings right over here. The Tesla Model Y is still very, very popular, and that's good for them. So awesome stuff. That's giving it more composure, a lot more, a lot more popularity in the U.S. For Morgan Stanley, we still have an overweight rating for Tesla, so they're still saying Tesla will outperform the market. It has been outperforming the market to some extent, but we'll have to see if this lasts depending on deliveries. The price risk ratio is flat because Tesla's not moving much. And we tend to see more volatility on Tuesdays, green about 51% of the time on Tuesdays. And we see more seasonality usually around noon and then 3 o'clock p.m. So we'll see how things go from there. On top of all of this, we also have volume at about 62 million. That is currently below average. And then we also have, let me just double check this, our short volume is still going up as we're seeing sellers stepping in. Anyways, that is it, at least for Tesla in terms of our data. The question is what's going to happen from here. Let me give you guys my opinion. So for Tesla, we're in a very, very interesting place. Tesla has this resistance. Okay. The resistance is currently at 183. If we break that, look at 185, then 188. If we end up projecting, we have support basically around 182.5 is a minor support that's very close to our 20 EMA. Losing that opens the door for the 180 area for Tesla. That's our 50 EMA. This range right here, 180 to 180.74, because that's the 50 EMA and also our support. And if we lose 180, we'll be dipping all the way down towards the 177 zone. That's where we had this previous support as well. So those are your important levels to watch for on Tesla. What do I think is going to happen? Well, I am concerned we're going to dip a little bit more because today we grabbed liquidity right here. We saw Tesla just pump and we failed to hold above 183, 185, those levels. So that suggests to me that Tesla might dip a little bit more just for the super short term. And we could be looking for a retest of our 50 EMA. So I think we might be retesting 180.75 from a technical standpoint. Keep in mind that Tesla is also heavily dictated by the news. So, sometimes new headlines can come out that affect it. But for now, from a technical standpoint, the most likely possibility is we grab liquidity. We're going to be dipping down towards the 50 EMA at 180, maybe rebound, and then just continue to trade within this range. That's the most likely possibility. Now, even though Tesla may dip a bit tomorrow, then rebound and just kind of trade sideways and consolidate is the most likely possibility. Let me just note that the overall structure is still bullish on Tesla because we have a nice inverse head and shoulders that's forming, and we're actually still uptrending on Tesla, at least for the more medium term. So we have a nice inverse head and shoulders that's holding up nicely. There's more upside potential. And for the last 2 weeks, there's a nice uptrend right here. So it's actually looking pretty good. For SPY, okay, SPY is looking very interesting. I made a video where I brought up how we had this little pump on SPY, but I didn't trust the pump. I told you we may pump and dump. So when you look at the daily chart, we look more bearish right now. Technicals do favor the downside. And I think we're going to likely come close to, if not completely filling this gap soon towards 537. However, what happened was we kind of pumped a bit to fill this gap above towards 547, then we got a big rejection, right? I'm sure you guys remember that. So this is a signal that's telling us that the market is showing weakness and we have a trend change. We had this high up here, we came down, we got another retest of this high before we continued lower. So the trend is more bearish now. So I think what's going to happen is SPY tomorrow will kind of open up a little higher, then start dipping down towards 540. I think the 540 to 540.93 area will be tested. And if we lose that, we'll be looking for a bigger dip to fill the gap. If we hold that, we could consolidate around there. But I see a little bit more downside coming to SPY as the most likely possibility. To turn back to bullish, you want to see it break past 544 than 547. I don't find that to be more probable. It is possible we try to backtest it, but it's looking less likely. Even if we do, the odds do favor the downside. I'm going to be looking for a retest of our 50 EMA. For Nvidia looks bearish. It's been on a big drop. It's been dropping quite a bit. And I just want to note that we have this gap still to fill on the 4 hour around this 110 area. And we have supported 115 and 110 to be watching for. So I favor that we're going to be retesting. I think we could attempt to retest 120. I'm not sure it's going to hold that, and we're going to likely continue to fall as technicals look more bearish. I'm going to be looking for 115. Maybe we pop first and come down to 115, or we lose that, then we fill the gap to 110. So Nvidia looks a bit more bearish to me. For Bitcoin, we're losing 60,000 right now, so we're looking more bearish. I'll be looking at this previous support at 68,000. I'm sorry, not 68,000, 58,000 to be tested. And if that fails us, we'll be coming down to 56,500. So I favor those two supports to be tested. Pop and drop, another continuation lower for the overall stock. For the QQQ, the 4 hour is looking a little bit more bearish. If we end up losing 474, we'll be tipping all the way down towards, I would say 470. And then if we lose that, we have a gap to fill below. We have resistance currently around 475. If that breaks, we have basically 478 is going to be our next level. But I would say that the QQQ is looking a bit more bearish. The daily is also looking kind of weak right here. And we have 468 as a key support. So I think what's going to happen is the QQQ, because we're testing our 50 EMA on I think it's the 4 hour, what's going to happen is we're going to rebound a little bit, retest like 475 or so, shuffle, then continue lower. I think we're going to be testing the support here around 472. If we lose this, we'll be dipping down to fill the gap towards 468. So I favor the downside as a stronger possibility. For Aapl, we're looking kind of weak on the 4 hour, but there is something good for I guess you could say the bulls. We tested our 50 EMA. We actually held it. So that suggests to me that there are buyers defending Aapl at 206. We have resistance around 210, so we're kind of shuffling here. If we lose 206, we'll be dipping all the way down to lower levels like 202. So that's going to be a big signal. But our key level is going to be 206 on Aapl. Losing that opens the doors for even more downside. So I'll be watching that very carefully. So that's going to be pivotal, at least for the main five. Now I'll be looking at some more levels on Palantir and for the rest. Palantir had some bullish news, so we're going to be looking at 24.4 to be retested. If we do test that, we'll see if we get a rejection or not, but I do think we could try to pop a little bit above that. 24.4, then 24.7 could be tested, and we'll see if you reject after that. So look for a little bit of upside before we end up making our next move. Supermicro is looking a little bit more bearish as we have this downtrend being established. And if we end up losing 820, I'll be looking for a dip all the way down towards 800, and then this imbalance fill around 780. So I do favor the downside a little bit more as a stronger possibility. And this chart is looking a little bit weaker, at least on its 4 hour time frame. For Rivian is trying to rebound a bit. We're kind of going to shuffle in this range right here. I think we have the support around 10.8. We have resistance around this 11 area. If we break through this, we'll be looking for a push all the way up towards 11.4. But overall, I'd say that Rivian has some upside potential. We could retest 10.8 and bounce, and I think we're going to be pushing up towards 11.2. Then we'll see how it reacts to that, but watch for that carefully. SoFi is going to likely rebound. I think we're going to be testing 6.62, and we'll see if it breaks through that or not. But I do see a little bit more upside coming, just very slowly. For the IWM Russell 2000, we're looking more bullish on the 4 hour time frame. We could be testing 201.35, then 202.3 after that. So I favor upside a little bit more. We are trying to change the trend. We have this low here making higher highs and higher lows. So look for a bit more upside as a stronger possibility. For AMD, we're kind of trading sideways, but there is going to be a risk of this dipping lower. If we end up failing at 160, we'll be dipping down towards 158. If we break past 160, we'll be looking at 162. My guts tells me it's going to be dipping to 158, so we'll see what happens after that. For ARM, we're actually dipping quite a bit. We're below our 50 EMA. If we continue to fall, I'll be looking for a test of about, well, firstly, we have this previous resistance becoming support around 147, then 145. So I favor downside a little bit more. Coinbase is also looking a little bit more bearish as we are continuing to fall, forming a double top. So I favor downside all the way down towards lower levels. We have 220 as resistance and 215, and then we have support all the way down here around 208, followed by this gap fill around 200. My gut tells me that because we have a downtrend and double top like structure, we could pop and then drop lower, and we're going to be looking for a move all the way down to 210 or below that. Amazon is also dipping a bit. The 4 hour is looking kind of weak. I favor that this is going to be dipping down to 184.75. If we lose this, we'll be dipping all the way down towards 182.3 could become if we end up losing 184.75. I think we will be testing 184.75 at the very least for Amazon. And then if we lose that, we'll be dipping lower. So I favor a dip even more. For Meta, we're looking a little bit more in the middle. It kind of popped and drops today. It's kind of shuffling at the 50 EMA around 496. I think there's a good chance we're going to shuffle for a bit, but there is that risk of downside. So just be very careful if we do end up losing 492. So I do favor that a little bit more. Microsoft is also looking kind of weak, but we're at some key support at 446. Look for a test tomorrow. A little bit of a dip. It might dip a little bit more to 446. If we bounce off this, we're going up to 450. If we lose 446, we're going to be dipping all the way down to 443. So I favor the downside. Google is also kind of slowing down. We have support currently around 180. We have resistance around 182. We're kind of stuck in the middle. I think we may just continue to shuffle in this range. We're range bound right now, unless we lose 180. If we lose it, we're going to be dipping down to 179 or even below that. So I'll be waiting to see. GME is looking kind of weak, at least from a technical standpoint, because we're on a downtrend and we're approaching our 20 EMA. So GameStop might dip towards 22 a little bit more, and then we'll see if we get a bounce or not. But I am seeing, and I will admit that I see weakness on the chart. AMC is also showing some weakness. We have this gap to fill down here around 4.3. So I think there's a good chance we're going to fill that gap. For the DJT stock, we called a bounce yesterday, and lo and behold, we got the bounce. I think we're going to be retesting 36. If we break this, we're going up to 41. If we fail here, we're going to be dipping back down towards 31. So look for 36 and see if we reject and dip or not. I'll be waiting for that. For the VIX, we're on a nice uptrend right here. It's looking bullish, but we haven't been able to close above our 200 EMA yet. If we do break through this, this would be a signal that the market has more weakness coming. And overall, we have a nice double bottom, so the VIX is looking bullish. So we'll just have to give this more time. Let me just double check this. The 10-year treasury yield also has a bearish looking structure, but we will see what happens after Bowman's speech tomorrow. We'll see if this gets a bounce or not. This doesn't affect the market as much as it used to. Typically, when the yields go up, the market goes down, but this is more like relative to what happens with the 2-year. That's going to be a bigger recessionary indicator we'd be looking for. So I would rather pay attention to this via that instead of just saying that this will affect the market, because it doesn't really affect the market as much as it used to. The dollar does affect the market more, but one thing worth noting about the dollar is that we are bullish overall. We're on a nice uptrend. We did dip a bit today, but the uptrend remains. As long as we remain in this uptrend, as long as we're above our 105.4 support, so we got a bounce right here on the dollar, that would suggest that the market's going to dip lower. So that does still suggest that, so that's going to be very key. So for tomorrow, guys, even though Tesla has a bullish structure developing on the bigger time frame, for the short term, I could see a little bit more downside, a retest of 180 coming, maybe a bounce after that, and then some consolidation. I think that Tesla's just waiting for some big data, and once we get deliveries, there's going to be a massive move coming to the share price. So I'll be waiting to see how that goes. But with that being said, guys, I just want to say that I really appreciate every single one of you guys for listening and watching this video. I will see you guys very soon tomorrow before the market opens to announce how the data goes and also talk about Bowman. But until then, have a great rest of your day. Take care, guys, and I'll see you guys very soon. Thanks again, and peace out.